What's up, guys? Today I'm going to be updating my list for the best smartphones under $200. So these are around the $150. So this is as low as I can go for the channel here. I think this is as low as you should go in general. And these are some great, mostly old flagships, and a lot of parents and stuff, anybody who's on a strict budget and you want a phone for your kid and they, want to play like Roblox and stuff like that. These are some excellent phones, so definitely check out the Galaxy S21 FE. This phone recently got a pretty good price cut. It's actually well below 200 bucks, and always cross-check Amazon and eBay. eBay typically you can find better deals sometimes. It really depends, but this is a fantastic phone. One of my favorite phones to recommend to people, actually. So this phone still has a really good design. It's a plastic back, aluminum frame. It still has that really nice premium feel to it. So it's really well built. It's IP68 dust and water resistant as well too. And the phone is not really too big to hold. It's not like a massive phone. It's a 6.4 inch dynamic AMOLED display. It's 120 Hz HDR10 Plus at 1080p, and it's 403 for the PPI, a completely flat display. So it is a very nice screen, very good colors on here as well too. This phone actually recently got the Android 14 update, or the One UI 6.1 update. So you actually do have the circle to search now is actually here as well too. It actually has the Snapdragon AAA processor on here as well, and 128 gigs and 6 gigs of RAM. This phone does a fantastic job when it comes to gaming. You can play PUBG at HDR Extreme, you can play Roblox, and you can play Call of Duty. So this makes for a pretty good gaming phone on a budget. Now the speakers are still pretty decent on the S21 FE. You also have a pretty decent fingerprint scanner as well too. You do have face unlock you can take advantage of, but it doesn't just stop there. I think the S21 FE still has fantastic cameras. You can see from the shots here, you have a 12 megapixel standard and 8 megapixel telephoto, 3x optical zoom, and then also a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It can shoot in 4K 60, and you have a 32 megapixel selfie cam that also shoots in 4K 60. It is a fantastic camera at this price point. Pretty good dynamic range, pretty decent colors on here, really consistent ultra wide, decent telephoto. The selfie camera is also pretty decent on here as well too. So overall, I think anybody just looking at these photos, no one would say that this is a bad camera at all. And I want to talk about the battery life. So this phone has a bigger battery than the standard S21. This is why I really like this version. So the battery life is a lot better, I think, than the standard S21 here. It's got a 4500 milliamp hour battery, 25 watt charging, and you also do have the wireless and reverse wireless charging on board. So overall, this is a fantastic phone to pick, and it is also still going to get major OS updates as well too. All right, so next is the iPhone 11. You can find these in good condition for around 150 bucks. I saw one on eBay for 159 bucks. They're mostly going to be in good condition at this price point, but if you pay 50 bucks more, they actually sell these new on prepaid for like 200 bucks. So this is a fantastic device. I actually compared the iPhone 11 to the iPhone 16 recently, and a lot of people were still impressed with this device. So design wise, it still looks pretty good. I don't think this device really looks that outdated, at least from the back. It's still very comfortable to hold as well too, and it's a little bit more of a compact phone these days, I guess. It's IP68 dust and water resistant. You also have a 6.1 inch display. It's IPS LCD at 625 nits, and then you also have a 720p plus display, 326 for the PPI. It's not really that impressive in 2024, but in person the display still looks pretty sharp, and I don't really have an issue with it actually. So what's cool about this phone is it got the iOS 18 update, so you can customize it and do all that stuff, move the icons around. So it breathed a lot of life into this phone. You also do have the Apple A13 chip, 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM. This phone still is a fantastic phone, even just running the Geekbench and 3D Mark on here. It still does a great job. These phones, the older iPhones for me, they heat up a lot when you're gaming and stuff like that. But they can actually game pretty well. So you can play PUBG HDR Extreme on here. It can play most games fine, so it doesn't have a gaming issue at all. It's really mostly, I just don't like how warm the phone gets. And then also, make sure you pay attention to the 64 gigs. You might need 128 gigs to spend a little bit more, or you could use the cloud storage. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the speakers because the speakers are fantastic on here. Really good bass. They sound really solid still, so no issues with that. What surprised me the most is that people still really like the way the cameras come out. So if you watch that iPhone 16 comparison I did, uh, people were really shocked by how well this camera did. So it's a 12 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It can shoot in 4K 60 with a 12 megapixel selfie that also can shoot in 4K 60. You still get some really good shots with this camera. It was really going back to back with the iPhone 16. Now, obviously, I can see the improvements that they did, especially in low light photography. But if you're in good lighting, this phone takes still a fantastic shot and can still give you some really good video as well. Battery life on here is okay. It's not terrible, especially mine is like at 80 something percent, 80, I think 87 battery health, and the battery life is just okay on this device. It's definitely not really an all-day phone if you are doing kind of heavier stuff. But you do have wireless charging on board too, which is really nice. So the iPhone 11 is an excellent pick for this price point. All right, guys, next is going to be the LG V60. This is one of my favorite phones for power users. And this phone is incredible, especially on a budget. It's just, you get a lot of phone here. So you have an aluminum frame on here. It's IP68 dust and water resistant. I still really like the design here. It's a really well made phone as well too, just really solid as well. And then also you have a big 6.8-inch display. It's a POLED HDR10 Plus. What's cool about the V60 is that you actually do have a dual screen case support, so you can add a second screen to this phone. It's 1080p 395 for the PPI. Overall, just a really nice panel here. This phone got its last MageOS update with Android 13. It is running the Snapdragon 865 chip, and this phone is incredibly snappy and fast. It can still play games really well, Call of Duty, PUBG, emulators. This phone does a fantastic job still with gaming just in general. Now, this phone also has micro SD card support, so if you download a lot of content, then you can expand the storage, I believe up to 2 terabytes. So it's a really, really good phone for that. And then we also have 128 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM. This phone also has a built-in headphone jack with a quad DAC. So I actually do listen to this phone just for music listening purposes, especially if you guys have a really good pair of headphones. The music listening experience is phenomenal on this device. So you do also have pretty good speakers on here as well too. The fingerprint scanner is decent. It's not incredibly fast, but it does get the job done. The cameras on here are still pretty decent for the most part. If you give it a good amount of light, it can still give you a really good photo, but just like a lot of old flagships, it kind of suffers a little bit in low light. It's got a 64 megapixel standard with a 13 megapixel ultra wide. Has a 0.3 depth sensor with 8K 30 video, and then you also have a 10 megapixel selfie cam with 4K 30 video. So overall, the camera experience is still pretty decent on here, but just do note that, like a lot of old flagships, the low light photography is just going to be kind of okay. It's not going to be that great. You also do have very good battery life and very good standby time on here as well. So 5,000 milliamp hour battery, and you also get wireless charging as well too. So there's a lot to like about the V60, the dual screen case, the headphone jack, and then also you get SD card support, still a very powerful chipset. And there's nothing I really don't like about this phone. It's a phenomenal phone at this price. Now, if you guys are really serious about photos and you just, you're on a strict budget, you want a really good phone for taking pictures, the Pixel 6a is still a really, really good phone for taking photos. This phone is actually dirt cheap. You can find this well below 150 bucks. It's pretty cheap, guys. So it's got aluminum frame, plastic back. It's IP67 dust and water resistant. Overall, the design, it's got that classic kind of pixel design here. The screen is not too bad. It's an OLED display at HDR. It's also 6.1 inches and it's 1080p 429. This phone got a lot of flack for having a 60 hertz display, but the display is, pretty decently smooth, especially with the updates it's got. It's on the Android 14 update. It will be getting, updates as well too. So it's got the original Google Tensor chipset on here, and then we also do have 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM on this device. So if you want a phone with the Google experience and you want stock Android, then this phone is phenomenal for this price point. What is really cool about this phone is the speakers are actually pretty good, especially for the size of this device. I was really impressed with the speakers. The fingerprint scanner is all right. It's not anything too crazy. It works. But the cameras are what you buy this phone for. You will still get, I think, flagship quality stills with this phone. It is incredible. It's got a 12.2 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. You can shoot in 4K 60 and an 8 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 1080-30. Easily the best camera on this list by far. Like I said, you can put photos of the iPhone 16 and the S24. It can still take photos on that level. It's a really impressive camera. So these older Pixel phones do a fantastic job with stills. Absolutely incredible. The battery life is really not that bad on here as well. It's got a 4,410 milliamp hour battery, 18-watt charging on here, and overall the battery life is decent. You can definitely get through the day with this phone, no problem. So overall, it's a decent phone. It's not really a gaming phone per se. But I do like it for pretty much everything else. And lastly is going to be the S20 FE. This is a very good phone to consider. It's very cheap as well. This is a phone, again, you can find pretty much under $150 as well too. And this is a really good phone. Now, I would recommend the S21 FE that we talked about earlier. The biggest difference here is that this phone actually has SD card support. So if you're somebody who wants that kind of Samsung experience, but you want SD card support, then this is a phone that I actually still really like, and I actually think the processor on here is a little bit more efficient as well too. Design wise, it's a plastic back, it's aluminum frame, it's IP68, which is really good, dust and water resistant. The display is still really nice. It's a 6.5 inch Super AMOLED display, 120 Hz HDR10 plus, 1080p 407 for the PPI. Beautiful display still gives off some really nice colors. Again, this phone got its last MageOS update, Android 13, currently getting security patches. It's got the Snapdragon 865 chip on here, and like I said, this processor is definitely more efficient than the AAA processor. It doesn't kind of get heat up and get it warm as those processors. And you also do have micro SD card support, and then this one that I have has 128 gigs and 6 gigs of RAM, which still performs really well, especially with that Android 13 update. Really helped the smoothness of the phone. Now, the speakers are not really that impressive. They're okay. They sound decent. Not really anything too crazy. Fingerprint scanner is an optical one. Again, decent. You can use face unlock, which is good. The cameras, again, they're a little bit of a step below the S21 FE. They take pretty good pictures still in good lighting. Anything kind of low light, medium light, it'll lose a little bit of detail, but you can still get a really good shot out of this phone. It's got a 12 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel telephoto. You also have 3x optical with a 12 megapixel ultra wide. You also have a 32 megapixel selfie cam with 4K 60 video. So the overall camera experience, like I said, for this price point, I think is pretty decent still. The battery life is kind of okay on this phone. It's not anything too impressive as well. 4,500 milliamp hour battery, 25-watt charging, wireless and reverse wireless charging. Again, this phone, depending on how you use it, you can get through the day if you're a lighter user. If you're gaming, then you definitely got to charge it, but still a very solid device. I think all these devices are just incredibly good on this list for the price. So be sure to let me know what you guys think. Which phone would you guys buy? And I'll catch you guys in the next one.